I never wanted to hurt my sister. I just wanted to protect her from that's it. But if you want to hear how she did it, I don't know.
At just 18 years old, Keith Randalick faced a terrifying situation on May 22, 2009, that led to a brief yet distressing call to 911. The dispatcher's voice crackled through the line as Keith urgently uttered, "Come over quick," before abruptly ending the call. Moments later, the urgency in his voice returned when he dialed 911 once more, his plea turning more intense. "Get over here," he implored before again hanging up. The reason for Keith's distress calls was heart-wrenching. His younger sister was fighting for her life in the basement. Fueled by desperation, Keith's eyes remained fixed on the windows of his family home. The dwelling was shared by his mother, stepfather, 2 brothers, and the beloved little sister, who was now in dire need. Each passing second felt like an eternity as he awaited the blaring sirens and flashing lights of the emergency services. As the minutes ticked by with no sign of help, Keith's anxiety soared. A third call was made to 911, the words he spoke dripping with even greater dread than before. The clock on the wall seemed to taunt him, urging the authorities to arrive swiftly. And finally, at 7:54 p.m., his prayers were answered as the police arrived, their presence both a relief and a harbinger of the unknown. Meeting the officers at the front door, Keith presented a distressing sight. His body was splattered with red stains, an unsettling contrast against his pants, socks, sweatshirt, and even his face and hands. The gravity of the situation was profound as the officers began to piece together the puzzle of what had transpired within those walls. With a mixture of fear and determination, the authorities questioned Keith about his sister's whereabouts. His reply was swift, accompanied by a shiver-inducing calmness. "In the basement." The words hung heavily in the air as the basement, once a place of ordinary childhood memories, now held a haunting secret that demanded to be unveiled. Unbeknownst to Keith's 16-year-old brother, he was immersed in the world of video games within the confines of his upstairs room. Completely oblivious to the horrific event that had unfolded just below him, his reality shifted drastically when the eerie flashing lights of the police cars pierced through the windows. The abrupt intrusion of law enforcement spurred him into action. He descended the stairs, his heart pounding with a mixture of confusion and concern, his mind a canvas of questions awaiting answers. As he reached the scene, officers took command of the situation. The urgency of the circumstance was intense, their instructions direct and unwavering. Both brothers were swiftly instructed to lie on the ground, their hands cuffed, and their persons searched for any potential weapons. No weapons were discovered on either of them, yet the gravity of the situation was unmistakable. It was then that Keith uttered a haunting revelation to the police. "It's in the room with her." Within the basement's dimly lit expanse, a heart-wrenching scene unfolded. 4-year-old Sabrina Clement was lying motionless. The wounds on her bore witness to the tragedy that had unfolded. A household steak knife lay discarded on the ground, nestled between her small legs and feet. Its once pristine blade was now smeared with a substance unmistakably marked as red stain. The room's stillness was an eerie contrast to the tumultuous emotions that hung in the air. Sabrina's attire painted a heartbreaking picture. A multicolored shirt pulled upwards, exposing her chest, paired with pink shorts and socks. It was a stark reminder of the innocence that had been abruptly shattered, the vivid hues serving as a somber contrast to the darkness that now enveloped the room. As emergency responders entered this devastating scene, their expertise couldn't rewrite the tragic narrative that had unfolded. With aching hearts, they checked for any sign of life. But tragically, time had slipped away, and their actions were met with the chilling realization that they had arrived too late to alter the course of fate. A meticulous search of the house ensued, revealing unsettling traces of the harrowing events that had transpired. On the ground level, investigators came across 7 distinct red stains scattered across the kitchen floor, sink, and counter. The stains had already dried, their presence serving as grim reminders of the recent upheaval. A wall-mounted telephone, once a mundane household item, now bore the somber evidence of tragedy, its surface marred by red stains. The trail of evidence continued to unfold, leading the investigators through a heart-wrenching path. Red droplets marked their presence on the carpet and stairs that descended to the basement, a chilling trail that mirrored the steps of those who had ventured into the darkness below. In the wake of the chilling discovery, the focus shifted to the 2 teenage boys at the center of this riotous narrative, Keith and his brother. Their world had been upended, and the gravity of their situation became all-encompassing. With a solemn air, they were taken into custody, transported to the Will County Sheriff's Office, where their lives would intersect with the wheels of justice. The journey to the station was a quiet one for Keith, his silence a distressing contrast to the whirlwind of thoughts that must have been racing through his mind. Once at the station, the wheels of interrogation began to turn. Keith's brother was the first to face the questions, subjected to the relentless pursuit of truth by the officers. But as their inquiries unfolded, it became apparent that his knowledge held no key to unraveling the enigma that had shattered their lives. With that realization, he was gently escorted from the station, leaving an intense sense of emptiness in his wake. And then, it was Keith's turn. As he sat in that cold, sterile room, a storm of emotions must have raged within him. The truth, the fear, the guilt, all converged into a narrative that he was now poised to share. The air was heavy with anticipation, but no one could have been prepared for the chilling and disturbing account that was about to spill from his lips. A tale that would unveil the raw and haunting depths of what had truly occurred on that fateful day.
The Will County Investigation Office, downtown Joliet here.
Yes.
You've been moved from the Mokina Police Department here. I have to ask you once again, did any police officers ever talk to you about the incident that happened today so far? Ask you any questions on what happened.
Okay, wait, yes, I forgot to mention this.
Okay.
Right when I went in the car the first time.
Okay.
Not the police officer in that car, but another police officer just said, what was going through your blank mind?
Okay.
Initially, Keith cooperates readily with the officers. He sustains eye contact and communicates distinctly. Opting not to use profanity in the officer's presence might indicate his compliance and respectful attitude towards them.
But that's as much as...
That's all that was asked, so they didn't ask any particulars or anything like that, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you need a water?
No.
No bathroom breaks?
No.
You're all good?
Yes.
Okay. All right, okay? Very good.
These initial considerate words and gestures aim to establish a foundation of trust and rapport with Keith in preparation for the upcoming interrogation.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We'll be back in 1 second, okay?
Okay.
While some discredit body language analysis as unscientific, law enforcement agencies utilize it during interrogations. Detectives in such scenarios search for groups of 3 or more indicators occurring rapidly or simultaneously. These indicators signal potential discomfort or uncertainty in the individual's statements, rather than outright deception. It's vital to emphasize that identifying deception solely through body language analysis is not feasible. Keith's self-comforting gesture of holding his arms around his body, resembling a hug, signifies unease or defensiveness, possibly linked to his current circumstances or recent events. This stance, along with speaking softly and appearing small, might unintentionally portray innocence as a defense mechanism. Keith is left alone in the interrogation room for over 11 minutes, during which he remains nearly motionless, fixating on the floor or the crimson marks on his pants.
Hi, Keith. I know I introduced myself back at the station, but if you didn't remember, I'm Detective Lothan,
Right.
and I'm with the Mokina Police Department.
Yes.
And if you want to throughout the interview, call me Jason if you want, or Jay.
Okay.
That's fine,
All right.
okay? You like to be called Keith?
Yeah.
Okay, and this is Detective...
I'm Detective Trakey. I'm with the Sheriff's Office. That's why we came here.
Okay.
So, okay.
You go to Lincoln Way?
Yes.
Okay.
East.
East?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What are you, a senior?
Yeah.
Getting ready to graduate?
Was.
You guys, when does school end?
The last day is like June 1st.
June 1st. Okay.
How you doing in school?
I was gonna graduate. I mean, I had all A's, 1 C in English, but
Yeah, it's cool.
I was fine, you know.
The officers begin with casual conversation, aiming to establish rapport and ease with Keith. Such simple queries help suspects feel at ease and open up before transitioning to crucial inquiries. Interestingly, Keith employs past tense when discussing his impending graduation.
Huh. You taking classes or sports or anything?
No, but
No?
I mean, yeah, I had a future, you know.
Yeah.
I didn't do this for no reason.
Keith promptly admits his involvement, devoid of any denial, indicating his recognition of forthcoming repercussions. He sustains a respectful, articulate, and cooperative dialogue traits, generally inconsistent with psychopathy. although it's noteworthy that initial impressions of some psychopaths might resemble this demeanor.
Well, we wanna talk to you about what occurred.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna read you your constitutional rights before we do that. Okay.
Okay.
Keith promptly accepts responsibility for the incident. However, despite seeming to admit a degree of culpability, this isn't a strict admission due to the lack of precise details about the crime in both his answer and the posed question.
So why don't we just do this, Keith? Why don't we just start? Did you have school today?
Yeah.
Okay. Why don't you just start with how your day went? When you got out of school, what you did? Why don't you just take us through your day?
After I went out of school or before?
No, when you left school. You got out of school 2:45 or 2:30?
Right. Went home. Yeah.
The interrogators are constructing a chronological sequence of his day. This data serves as fundamental context, aiding officers in formulating aspects related to the supposed crime like motive, opportunity, means, and access.
I talked to my mom about moving out. She said that I could stay, but she said that I just told her that, I said that I wanted to move out and, to a friend's house, but I didn't really want to do that.
Only at this point does Keith exhibit signs of discomfort. Previously, he managed to remain motionless, but as he begins speaking, he starts fidgeting with his hands, casting his gaze downwards and displaying hesitancy, all indicative of anxiety.
I got a firearm permit last week, and I wanted to buy a firearm. She said I couldn't do that. So I was lying and saying I would move to a friend's house if she wouldn't let me buy it.
Keith places emphasis on confessing his falsehood to his mother, and his tone suggests that this holds significance for him. This might imply that he possesses a strong adherence to rules or a somewhat inflexible perspective on morality. Despite being legally an adult at 18, his assertion of lying regarding his intention to move out suggests an exceptionally rigid commitment to his personal sense of right and wrong. This detail gains heightened relevance in subsequent developments.
Okay.
And I wanted to use this because I'm my little sister.
Keith states to the officers that he took his half-sister's life because a family member assaulted her, asserting that he did so to protect her from further abuse. It's crucial to note that these allegations by Keith have not been substantiated, and the police have yet to uncover any corroborating evidence for their veracity.
I would tell my parents, and they would never do anything about it. And they would say, don't snitch and things like that.
This further supports the notion that Keith possesses a rigid commitment to acting in accordance with his moral convictions, or what he perceives as right.
So that happens. So.
You confronted your parents about?
Multiple occasions for like the past 2 years.
During the third 911 call that night, Keith explicitly informed the dispatcher that he had hit his sister using a knife. Upon the arrival of emergency services, he promptly confessed to the officers at the door, using a gentle yet unwavering tone, saying, "It was me." By the time the police reached the residence, his attire showed signs of having already dried, possibly indicating the presence of red stains.
I killed my sister. He had nothing to do with it. He was in his room. I told him he was watching her because my parents were at his dance. He was watching her. I said I would watch her. So he went up to his room. I took her down to my room, which is the basement, and we just watched SpongeBob, and she said she wanted to paint with me. So I took out a knife and it's very disturbing. I would never have did it, but I just wanted to protect my little sister from my...
As Keith speaks, his discomfort becomes intensified. Describing the whole incident proved challenging, leading to restlessness, hand-wringing, and an unsteady, emotionally charged voice. While the officers maintain silence, refraining from conveying judgment through their body language, Keith struggles to establish eye contact until he embarks on justifying his actions. At this juncture, he locks eyes with the officer dressed in black as he explains that he felt compelled to do it to safeguard his sister. This instance of direct eye contact might signal Keith's desire for the officer to comprehend his rationale, showcasing his confidence in this aspect of his account.
So did you guys ever start painting?
Painting?
You said she wanted to paint with
Right,
you.
no, I told her that she had to lie down and I would paint with her. That's what happened when I took out the knife.
Did you have the knife downstairs already? Where was the
It
knife?
was in right here.
You had it inside your hoodie?
Yes.
How long had you been carrying the knife around?
Brought it like 5 minutes before I asked to let me watch her.
Why did you want? How come you asked to let you watch her?
So that I could kill my sister.
Okay.
When did you start thinking about that?
When my parents said that I couldn't buy my firearm, I knew that I couldn't kill her. But I never wanted to hurt my sister. I just wanted to protect her from my that's it. But if you want to hear how she died, I don't know.
Okay. Was she laying on the ground?
Yes, and
So you told her to lay down?
right, and she was fully conscious, and she was talking to me during it. If I tell you this now, I mean, you're recording this, I don't have to say it in court or anything, right?
His body language, characterized by fidgeting, indicates a clear discomfort or anxiety regarding his narrative. While detailing the brutal act, Keith adopts a relatively neutral and straightforward tone. Nonetheless, his expressed apprehension about testifying in court could signify a sense of shame concerning his deeds.
I don't know that for sure.
I mean, I really don't want to talk about this that much.
Subsequent autopsy findings would unveil that the 40-pound young girl sustained extensive and severe wounds to her neck. The deeply unsettling nature of the crime stands in stark contrast to Keith's subdued vocal tone as he recounts it.
He was upstairs.
Okay, he was watching TV with her in the living room first.
Okay.
Then I went in there and said, let me watch her. So he went upstairs to his room, then I took her downstairs to my room.
Did you have the knife at that point?
Here's what happened. I came up from my room. I did the dishes real quick. Then I just took a knife, put it in my hoodie right away. Then I walked right in there and said that.
So where did you get the knife?
Kitchen cabinet.
Did you have any conversation with her? You said that
Yes.
she was alert.
She was talking to me during it, and I was just trying to do it as quick as possible.
Okay.
But she was in a lot of pain.
Okay. Could you? I know it's tough.
Yeah.
We'll get you through this. Could you describe to me how you did it? Let's back up a minute. Could you tell me what kind of knife it was?
It wasn't a butter knife. It had like edges to it.
Like a steak knife type?
Right.
What kind of handle?
Just brown. It was like big.
Would you say like it was metal?
How big would you say?
The handle or the
Yeah,
blade?
The whole knife.
Oh, the whole knife was maybe like this.
Okay. Was it one of those knives that you would find in your drawer with all your other forks and knives and spoons?
Yes, it was just like a steak knife.
Okay.
It wasn't anything like a weapon or anything.
Okay.
This phrase is particularly significant. By acknowledging that any object can become a weapon based on its use, it appears to reflect a form of psychological detachment from both the method employed in the crime and the crime itself.
Wooden handle or something, or metal handle?
I think it was wooden.
Okay. And then you said you had her lay down on the ground?
Yeah, I told her to do that.
Okay. And this was in
My room.
your room, which is
The
located?
basement.
The basement, okay.
Did you tell her that you were going to do this?
No. I just said I love her, and then I took out the knife, and she smiled, and I made just a little cut of her neck, and I withdrew back because I was afraid, and then she screamed and grabbed her neck, and she said, no, stop, but I just kept, I started doing it again, and then she started talking to me, and she was still conscious and said, why are you killing me? So then I started on the right side. She didn't talk anymore, but she was still breathing and had her eyes open. So I just ran upstairs and called the police. Then when I came back down, it looked like she died.
In this moment, Keith's emotions intensify, evident through his shifting gaze and difficulty in maintaining eye contact, an indication that remorse might be affecting him. This behavior could also stem from a sense of shame regarding his actions or a fear of judgment by the officers. The officers remain composed and empathetic in their approach. When dealing with a seemingly timid suspect like Keith, this method is often employed, as aggressive confrontation could cause him to withdraw and hinder communication.
When you ran upstairs, did you find your brother? Did your brother find you?
No, he was in his room, the living room. We had a family phone in the kitchen. So I went to the family phone. I dialed the police. I just said, come here. I hung it up, went back downstairs, checked on her, and then went back up. I didn't hear any police cars, so I called again. I said, come here again. I hung it up. Then I, looked outside for more. I was, waiting. So then the police called back, so I picked it up. I said, there was a murder. And then I was just explaining to them that I did it.
Where did you put the knife?
Oh, it was right next to her.
You just dropped it on the ground by her?
Yes.
Okay.
Where were you when the police came?
I was waiting for them at the front door because the lady said, do you see the police outside? I said no. So I hung up the phone and I walked to the front door, and then the police rang the doorbell. I opened the door, and then they just said, get down. They told my brother, who came downstairs because he saw the police from his room, he said, what are they doing here? They told him to get down too. And my brother was in shock because he said, what did you do to my baby? So
how do you think he knew what happened?
He saw the blood, and at first he didn't know it was my sister. But one of the police officers said, who died? I said, my sister. And he said, where's she at? I said, the basement. Then got hysterical, and he said, what did you do to my sister? Or something. So.
What was your sister? What was she wearing?
What was she wearing? Just a t-shirt, pants. I can't really tell you the color or anything. I wasn't paying attention. After she died, though, I gave her a kiss and I said, I'm sorry I had to do this, but I really love my sister.
When did you do that after you came back downstairs the
Right.
first time?
Yeah, I only went down one more time. Right after I called the police, I went back down, and that's when I did that. It looked like she was dead.
Psychopaths occasionally exhibit a perplexing duality, presenting themselves with a facade of impeccable morals and values, relishing a sense of superiority over others. However, they paradoxically engage in objectionable deeds while rationalizing their actions. Keith seemingly follows this pattern by rationalizing his actions as a means of safeguarding his sister, and even apologizing to her.
Could you just describe for me how you did it? I mean, when you say the side, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, were you behind her?
No.
Kinda...
I was in front of her. She was lying down, right there. I just was kneeling, and I just did it like that. Just to her neck, right here and here.
Did you kneel on top of her or on the side?
Right in front of her.
Right in front of her. So at first you thought you guys were playing around, or?
Yeah. I told her that we were going to paint.
In this instance, Keith doesn't seem to be distancing himself from the crime. In fact, he goes so far as to indicate on his own body where he inflicted the neck wound on his sister. The primary sign of his unease is manifested in his nervous laughter.
Right when my mom told me that she wouldn't let me use any of my money to buy a firearm.
And that would have been when you first got home from school, around 3 o'clock, 3:30?
3:30.
The officers are working to determine if the crime was premeditated. Observe how Keith cradles his chin as if lost in contemplation. Not only does he seem at ease addressing this query, but he also demonstrates a desire to provide an accurate time frame.
That's her name, Sabrina.
Up until today, when you had the discussion with your mom about the firearm,
Yeah.
you stated that you wanted the firearm to
Right, to shoot.
To shoot.
And that was it.
This marks the initial instance where Keith vocalizes his sister's name. Earlier, he might have referred to her as my sister to assert their relationship. If Keith exhibits psychopathic traits, this phrasing could hint at a potential sense of ownership over Sabrina, potentially aiding his self-justification. Conversely, it could also signify a form of detachment from her and the crime by avoiding her name until discussing the incident. Following this, you'll observe him more at ease in using her name.
Yeah, that was all I would have used it for.
So you never thought about killing Sabrina up until that point in time?
Never.
It wasn't until your mom said, no, you're not getting a firearm.
She said I had to go out and work for it, but he was tormenting my sister, worse and worse every day.
Why did you choose her neck area?
I thought it'd be the fastest way to kill Sabrina, just as quick as possible without as much pain.
Did you ever see this anywhere? I mean,
No, I don't think so. I mean, I've heard about it. There was people who strangled people. I didn't want to do that to her, but I mean, she was in an extreme amount of pain, though. I'll tell you that. She was screaming and crying and trying to fight me, but she couldn't fight back. So,
did you ever think at some point in time you could have stopped?
I did. Right after I cut her neck the first time, I made a little cut, and then I stopped. And then she grabbed her neck, but I just kept going.
Did you ever do any research or looking into
No, sir.
about doing anything like this before on the internet or any books or anything?
No. Did you talk to my parents at all, or?
No.
Okay.
you all right?
Yeah. Also, I'd just like to say real quick that my mom and my stepfather are pretty good people.
Keith's remarks regarding his parents appear as a form of deflection, which is peculiar given that he's already admitting responsibility for the crime.
Hang it in there.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to drink it or not, but it's just water.
Alright, yeah, I know. Alright, thanks.
All right, hang in there. We'll get you through this.
Alright.
All right.
The interrogators exit, leaving Keith alone for roughly 20 minutes. He remains virtually immobile throughout this period, once more assuming a self-embrace stance. The return of an officer with water for Keith is intriguing, particularly since he had previously declined it. This act might denote a mix of shock and compassion on the investigator's part, potentially fostering rapport and trust. Once the officer exits again, Keith is left solo for an additional 50 minutes. This extended solitude holds significance. Usually, law enforcement avoids leaving suspects alone for such durations unless there's a purpose, possibly for the investigators to regroup emotionally, verify statements, or employ tactics to unsettle or prompt reflection in the suspect. Typically, interrogators limit solitary time to prevent suspects from fabricating stories. Keith, however, has exhibited a high degree of truthfulness, cooperation, and transparency throughout the interrogation. Despite pauses, he's answered every query posed. Once more, he remains virtually motionless for nearly an hour, barely shifting in his seat.
How you doing?
Alright, how are you?
You need any more water or anything?
No, I'm fine.
Bathroom?
Not right now.
Okay.
The interrogators re-enter to seek clarification on certain aspects from Keith. Their emphasis lies in comprehending his motive and elucidating his confession. While a motive isn't necessarily a requirement for courtroom validation, juries can often struggle to fathom a suspect intentionally opting to take the life of a close relative like a sibling. Establishing Keith's motive helps the jury in envisioning the rationale behind the crime.
Keith, we just want to go over a few more things with you, ask you a few more questions. We have interviewed and spoke to some other family members, so we have a better idea of what was going on within your family. So
Keith proceeds to offer further insights to the interrogators about the alleged assaults he claims Sabrina endured. He delves into specific instances where he grew convinced of Sabrina's suffering. Once again, his rigid personal moral code takes center stage. He seems driven to do what he perceives as right, even if it entails the extreme measures. Strikingly, Keith might not perceive his actions as extreme due to his intense focus on rectification. seemingly blinded to the gravity of committing the crime. The lack of common sense regarding the horrific nature of his solution is evident. Keith reiterates his assertion that he aimed to protect his sister through his act. This declaration is pivotal, serving as his stated motive, irrespective of its actual validity. At this juncture, Keith asserts twice that he is 99% certain about the assaults. However, while recounting the story for a second time, he introduces a caveat that he isn't entirely certain if the assaults did transpire. This contradiction arises. He appears to believe his statement but wavers when admitting the absence of definitive proof.
Did you consider Sabrina your sister and your
Yes.
blood?
Absolutely.
You never wanted to exclude her from the family?
Never.
Did you ever have any ill feelings or discontent about her being born because it was with a different father?
Oh, I don't know why my mom said that. Okay.
Keith,
The investigators aren't outright dismissing Keith's claim of protecting the victim from assault as a motive, but they recognize that it lacks rational coherence. They're attempting to uncover more logical motives that could provide insight into the crime's rationale. The interrogators propose alternative motives they perceive as more plausible, like harboring resentment toward his younger sister's birth. However, Keith vehemently refutes this notion. Superficially, it seems that Keith genuinely held familial affection for his little sister, rendering the motive all the more perplexing.
Sabrina was always part of my family.
the problem I have,
Yeah.
that we both have, is how could you be protecting Sabrina by doing what happened tonight?
Yeah.
Doing that. I mean, it's
I'm not proud of that. There's no excuse for it. I knew what I was doing. It was premeditated, you could say. Looking back at
I just want to
this,
stop you real quick. When you say premeditated, what do you mean it could be premeditated?
like the legal definition, thought out. I thought about it like at 3:30. I did it at like a couple hours later, so I was not temporary insanity. But
Keith's clear and comprehending discourse regarding the premeditated nature of his crime, as well as his rejection of it being a consequence of temporary insanity, underscores his intelligence. This suggests he might have conducted research prior to the crime, gaining insight into the potential repercussions of his actions.
No, but what would put you in this? What at 3:30 made you start thinking that you wanted to do this to her? I mean,
okay,
something must have happened, and that's what we're trying to figure out. Because Keith, you're not telling us the whole story.
All right, I told you what happened. My
But
mom
you're not
said I
telling us the
can't.
whole truth.
She said I couldn't buy a firearm. I wasn't going to get this firearm and just kill right away. I was never going to do that. That was just an option I wanted to have in case anything ever happened where he got out of control with my sister. But she said, there's no way you're getting this. And he's bigger than me, he's taller than me, he's a lot stronger than me. I would rather have got Christian out of the way than my sister, to be honest.
But you didn't, and you got rid of your only sister.
Right. And she was the person I loved the most in that family. She was my best friend.
Why did you love her the most?
Okay, it's not that I didn't like specifically love my parents, it's just that me and her were always close. We spent more time together than anyone else. Well, I mean, she spent the most time with her mom, but I spent the most time with her than anyone else.
The interrogators intensify their pressure on Keith, insinuating that he might be deliberately misleading them, or even deceiving himself regarding his motive. Given the implausible nature of the stated motive, the investigators seek an alternative explanation that holds more rationality. However, both sides seem to overlook the possibility that Keith's motives could be internally coherent to him, despite appearing nonsensical and illogical externally.
You seem like a good kid,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm believing a lot of what you're saying,
Yeah.
but I'm not believing everything.
Okay. I mean, if you have something you want me to clarify, I will.
Well, here's what I don't want to happen. I mean, obviously there's a death here.
Yeah.
Your sister is gone.
I know.
Tomorrow, or whenever, we go through a process where we just determine the cause of death.
Mm-hmm.
And when we do that, it's a full examination of a body.
Yeah. It's an autopsy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And my concern is that are we going to discover anything else that could have happened?
Yeah.
Where maybe it may have happened and Sabrina said no, and that's why this whole thing happened, because Sabrina's growing up now?
Wait, she said no to what?
That's why I'm just asking. I mean, did anything take place where Sabrina was fighting with you and said no?
Absolutely not. She was completely innocent. I saw her, we were watching SpongeBob, she said, let's paint. So I just said, lie down, and that's when she's not to blame for this.
I wouldn't say she's to blame for this. I mean, that's not what I'm trying to figure out.
You're saying, like, did she, like, instigate me or anything?
Did she instigate you, or did you maybe get excited and get aggressive to her or anything?
No, no, I was absolutely not like that, sir.
Have you ever?
No. Like I said, I think I might have, at least there was that one time for sure, but I'm not like a child. I don't like little children.
Even as the interrogator delves into the possibility of an inappropriate relationship with his little sister, Keith takes some time to grasp the implication. He maintains his respectful demeanor, addressing the officer as sir, and remains composed throughout the interaction.
Keith, you made numerous statements of how beautiful Sabrina was and how much you loved her and she was your pet.
Right.
Well, how could you hurt something so beautiful? What could make you do that?
Observable changes in one interrogator's body language become apparent. He shifts from a relaxed posture to a hunched stance, often rubbing his forehead and face. This alteration might stem from his frustration over the difficulty in extracting desired answers from Keith. The officer's focus on rapport and trust building appears to diminish, while his tone remains composed despite outward indications of possible frustration.
Abuse of her was getting worse and worse. Like I said, my original plan was, if he got out of line, I would just take care of him, and then I'd be here just about a 14-year-old instead of a 4-year-old. I didn't want to do that.
But Keith, you know right from wrong.
Yes, I do.
I mean, you're a man, right?
Yeah.
Throughout the interrogation, the interrogators have consistently alluded to or directly stated the existence of an undisclosed element, a missing puzzle piece that might shed further light on the driving force behind Keith's act.
Okay, what would you do?
If you're so mad at for what he's doing, you turn around and do something worse than what you was doing.
If it was sexual, I disagree with that.
I'm not saying it's but what you did tonight. I mean, it's...
Well, it took about 4 minutes, but she's not in any more pain anymore. She's not, like, every day having someone torment her.
It appears that Keith has rationalized that quick and sudden suffering is a preferable course of action compared to her prolonged misery. This instance underscores his inflexible thought processes and stringent concepts of morality.
Did you ever talk to a school counselor?
About what?
About
your counselors always talk to you every year.
Okay, about maybe or going to the police and telling them what was going on at home, or I mean, there's options of when there's abuse taking place.
Right.
I mean, there's Department of DCFS, Department of Child Family Services. I mean, there's. Did you ever think about any of those things?
I've told my parents, and they just like laughed at me, and they said, "Don't be a snitch," and whatever. I didn't have the DCFS number.
In this instance, Keith employs deflection, once more rationalizing his choice of action.
I'm not a parent, so I really wouldn't know about that stuff. I mean, I've heard about it, but I mean, I didn't remember any of it at that time.
I just want to make sure that we're not leaving anything out because, you know,
Yeah.
Like I said before, we want to put this behind us and move on.
Okay.
Deal with what we have to deal with.
Yeah.
But I'm concerned that maybe there is still more that we haven't talked about and we haven't figured out. And I just want to make sure that, I mean, and if you feel fine and you don't want to talk about it, that's none of my business then. None of our business. But I think there's more there that we need to get out and clarify, because I can tell just, I mean, I don't know you, I just met you today, but you just don't seem like you're comfortable. Like there's something more that maybe you don't trust us to talk about yet.
I completely trust you. I trust the police. That's why I called them. I have nothing to hide. I didn't change my clothes and hide them.
No.
I didn't frame anyone. I admitted it right away.
Keith's case is intricate. He has remained open and cooperative throughout the interrogation, as well as during his immediate contact with the police after the crime. There's a suggestion that he might possess traits of antisocial personality disorder with narcissistic features, given his conviction in his right to make such a grim decision regarding his sister's life. Nonetheless, discernible indications of significant antisocial or narcissistic traits are absent during the interrogation. No clear signs of a God complex or a pronounced lack of remorse are evident. Unlike many psychopaths, Keith doesn't seem to derive enjoyment from the attention stemming from the crime or his participation in the interrogation.
I'm just trying to get this, over with. Whatever my punishment is, it is. I'm fine with that. I have nothing to hide. I mean, if you have any more questions, so I'll discuss them with you, but I'm not hiding anything.
Okay.
Was there anything that you were afraid Sabrina could say about you? Were you
No,
threatened by anything?
I told you, I had no relationship with my little sister.
In this instance, Keith returns to referring to Sabrina as my little sister, potentially indicating a desire to create a degree of emotional separation. As the dialogue progresses, the interrogators continue to search for a motive that aligns more logically with their perspective. They appear hesitant to fully embrace Keith's seemingly irrational explanation that it was an act of protection.
I'm not talking. I'm saying, did she know about something, or?
Oh, no, she did not. The only thing was, when I pulled out the knife, I knew right then that I had to kill my little sister, because she saw it, and there was no going back at that point.
Keith's statement about Sabrina seeing the knife and his conviction that there was no way to reverse the course is indeed perplexing. This is especially confounding given that he promptly turned himself in and admitted to his crime. The discrepancy raises questions about his thought process and the emotional complexity of his reasoning.
Me and my mom had a fight about the firearm thing, so she would not leave me in charge. She wasn't just friendly towards me, like she brought me dinner, but she wouldn't leave me in charge, like with Sabrina at that time.
How'd that make you feel?
We talked about, she asked me originally last week, she's like, you want to babysit for $650, Sabrina? I said, yeah, I'll babysit her for that day. Then we got in a fight, and then she just said it's gonna babysit. That had nothing to do with why I did what I did, though. The only reason she didn't let me babysit was because me and her had a fight.
How did that make you feel, that you weren't babysitting?
Well, okay, you have to understand this, though. She was in my room before that, though. Like, before they left, when she was getting done, she got us Taco Bell. Before they left, she was in my room, like, playing with me and stuff, so it wasn't like I couldn't see her, My mom knew that we were playing together and whatnot, so...
But you earlier you said you first thought about doing this at 3:30.
Yeah, around there, yeah.
So then she came down into your room?
Yeah.
Late after that? And
right.
You played with her?
Yeah.
The suggested motive that Keith might have committed the act out of a sense of revenge due to not being allowed to babysit is indeed a fragile one. However, it aligns more suitably with the police's conceptualization of a motive, even though it remains a relatively weak explanation.
That was around like maybe 4 to 5, like 4:30 to 5 something.
So if you already at 3:30 had it set in your mind that you were going to do this, how come you didn't do it at that time?
Because my mom was coming home and my stepfather was still home, so I didn't want one of them to stop me before I finished it. I knew that once I started, like, Brina would be horribly disfigured and have like breathing problems the rest of her life if she didn't like die at that time. So
it's evident that Keith gave consideration to the crime and its potential consequences.
Were you worried about being home?
No. I knew he'd just go in his room. I mean, he had nothing to do with it, but
Why did you think he would just go in his room?
He listens to music, that's his thing. He didn't know anything though, you know.
What would you say if he told us otherwise?
You could ask him, but he's not gonna, I don't know what he would say, because all I know is the truth. He didn't know I had a knife right here when I asked him to let me watch Brina. You could interview him. I never talked to him. I think I'm gonna cut Brina's throat today. I never said that to him. Or anyone. I didn't even know about it till 3:30.
So before 3:30 today, it never crossed your mind that you wanted to end Sabrina's life, harm her in any way?
I was thinking if I had to do it to anyone, I would have to do it to...
Why do it at all?
Because, could not be stopped. His mom spoils him, and he has a sugar problem where he can't control himself when he has any amount of sugar.
Wouldn't you worry about, you said he's getting bigger or stronger?
Yeah, well, he was bigger and stronger than me. I wasn't worried about it. It's just that's why I didn't attack him with a knife, because I couldn't. He's a lot stronger than me.
Keith seems to display a concern for his own safety, suggesting that the alleged assailant is physically superior to him, and thus necessitating the use of a weapon. This might also imply that he recognized the potential for retaliation if he were to confront the assailant directly. Keith's rational understanding of this situation led him to refrain from targeting the alleged assailant to protect himself. However, he seemed willing to sacrifice Sabrina, driven by a compulsion to rectify what he perceived as a wrongdoing.
And you knew your parents were going out this evening, so that's
Yes.
right.
Well, okay. Like I said, I knew that they were going out, but I only thought of that plan at 3:30.
Keith, did you ever have anybody try to take advantage of you at any time when you were little?
Oh, no, sir.
I just
Yeah,
want
I
to make
know.
sure.
Okay.
I can't crawl into your mind. He can't crawl into your mind. But we just want to make sure that we get it. You know, that we can understand.
Sure.
Yeah.
We have a job to do.
I know.
And you know, there's going to be a lot of questions asked of us.
Right.
So you got to be able to bring closure to your brothers, to your mom and dad.
I understand.
Do you know what closure means?
Comfort, condolences, reason.
Try to help them understand why.
Yes. Well, I didn't want to do it, but the main reason why I did it was just because he was getting worse and worse as the days went by.
How do you feel now that you did it and it's over with?
I feel that if I could go back, I would try and do it to Christian, not her. Maybe I would get a job and work so I could just take care of Christian instead of my little sister. I mean, it was a waste of life. If I could have went to the police and proved anything about Christian, I definitely would have did that. But I didn't have any proof.
Pretty much cover everything then?
Yeah.
Keith,
Yes, sir.
you covered everything?
Yeah.
I just feel like when I'm talking to you, you don't want to like look at me like.
I'm just.
You know what sometimes that means when people don't want to look at you when they're talking to you.
Right.
Sometimes it means that they're not telling you everything.
Yeah, I just want to get out of these pants, so you know.
Okay, we'll get you out of those. Well, you want more water?
No, well. All right. Yes, please.
Okay, I'll get you another cup.
So am I staying here tonight then?
Well, we're going to take a quick break real quick and we'll be back in,
Oh, okay.
give you some water.
We're going to work on the close thing.
Yeah,
Okay.
we're
We'll
just
work on
going to
that.
get you out of those.
Yeah.
Anything else you need?
No, just the clothes.
Sit tight, I'll get you some more.
All right, thanks.
All right.
Subsequently, an officer and an evidence technician will arrive to photograph Keith and gather all of his clothing. This conforms to standard procedure. The tainted evidence will be carefully placed into paper bags before undergoing analysis.
All right, Keith, I've got some clothing for you to wear, okay, because we need to take the clothing that you have on, okay? We're going to do it on the off-shooter camera because you have to strip down with everything that you have and give it to our evidence technician, and then we'll go ahead and we got clothes for you to put on, okay?
Throughout the interrogation, Keith remains unwavering in his account, exhibiting consistency in his narrative. The entire case appears enigmatic. Despite the perplexity, Keith's recounted story ultimately aligns with the truth in the final assessment. The subsequent day, Keith's mother and stepfather are brought in for a brief interview. They arrived back at their home at 9:10 p.m. the previous night while Keith was already in custody, discovering the crime scene with their youngest son. The investigators informed them about the incident and that both of their sons were apprehended. In their short interaction with the police, Keith's stepfather notes that Keith had been displaying odd behavior recently, although he generally kept to himself, lacked many friends, and was typically quiet. He believed that family relations were generally amicable, aside from ordinary disagreements. Contrastingly, Keith's mother, Anne Clement, provided a divergent perspective. It's important to note that they had just learned the previous day that their son had done the unthinkable. The following details are based on police documents and may not be verbatim. Anne Clement asserted that Keith didn't have positive relationships with anyone in the family except for Sabrina. She portrayed him as frequently ungrateful, disrespectful, and prone to saying hurtful things to family members. There were instances of physical violence between Keith and his mother, along with some altercations involving one of his brothers. As they departed from the sheriff's office, Anne Clement emphasized that she never witnessed any signs of abuse or assault. Following the interrogation, investigators turned their attention to the family's residence. They stumbled upon unsettling writings and journal entries attributed to a family member. These materials mainly took the form of stories or song lyrics, yet some contained disturbing references to violent themes. The police ultimately concluded that Keith was not the author of the notes, and the family member he accused of assaulting Sabrina wasn't responsible either. The individual behind the journal entries claimed they were lyrics from Eminem's songs, and it was determined that these entries were unrelated to the crime. Subsequently, Keith was found to be mentally fit for trial. A psychiatrist's report indicated the presence of a personality disorder, though the specific disorder was not specified. Keith ultimately entered a blind plea, pleading guilty to his crime in the case of his 4-year-old sister, Sabrina Clement. A blind plea involves a guilty plea without any predetermined agreement in place. It's termed blind because there are no assurances, and the sentencing is left to the discretion of the judge. In 2011, none of Keith's family members or friends were present at his sentencing. Although he retained his characteristic soft-spoken demeanor, Keith addressed the judge directly, reiterating the same narrative he had conveyed to the officers during the interrogation. He also asserted that the state attorney was not qualified to judge him, citing their differing backgrounds. The prosecutors had recommended a life sentence or a term of 60 to 100 years, essentially ensuring that Keith would spend the rest of his life in prison. In April 2011, he received a sentence of 40 years of continuous imprisonment, signifying that he must serve the entire 40-year duration without the possibility of sentence reduction for good conduct. Keith Rangelik is presently incarcerated at the Pontiac Correctional Center. His anticipated parole date is slated for May 21, 2049, at which point he will be 58 years old. As we delve deeper into the mysteries and uncover the truth, your support drives us to keep investigating the unknown. Don't miss out on our upcoming discoveries. Hit subscribe and join us in unraveling the enigma together.